And there it is. That is the classic Zoom voice that I have been listening to throughout the pandemic years that we've been having, and will certainly be something that is a part of our experiences. So let me go ahead and get started. So before I introduce myself, let me introduce our organization for just a moment. So NeuroMaker, as you can see it here on my screen, as my Zoom account, is one of the big verticals of the company BrainCo. BrainCo is incubated in the Harvard iLab, but you can see here, it's actually a very modest building, and it's not nearly as fancy as it looks in this rendering right here, just to give you a little peek under the curtain. And we are one of the top 10 brain-machine interface companies in the world. So we were rated by a few different organizations over the past few years, and by employee headcount, and I believe by people served, we are either the highest or one of the biggest ones out there. So we hope we have some idea of what we're talking about. We've been featured in publications by MIT and NASA. If you are interested in seeing some of our research, you can actually see it in the NASA Technology Transfer Program or through some of our educational research from the MIT Media Lab. I'd be happy to dive into that if anybody's interested. And then finally, since we're all in the world of education technology, we have to mention the word ISTE somewhere. So we've been featured in ISTE events and we've gotten some awards. Once again, happy to delve into that if you are interested. So we have a couple people that are going to be jumping in today. Josh may be joining us in a moment. He's currently handling a last minute issue, but he is our educational partnerships director, and he is amazing at really connecting district needs with the kind of technology that we provide. So you may be hearing from him in the future. He's part of the National Latino Coalition for Equity, does some really amazing work, and I think is somebody who we can all get to know a bit better. And you will see in a much less glorious fashion, here is myself on this next slide. So my name is Andrew, and I am, my current title is product manager here at NeuroMaker. And my whole goal is to find the best way that our technology can solve the issues out there that we all encounter in education. So we can pop open the hood and take a look at a few of those today. But I think one thing that will be of direct consequence to you all is seeing how engaged I am in this process. And I think this will be a great mechanism to show how our technology works and some of the ways that we've unpacked this for students. So let's go ahead and go back to our brainwave counter. So let's see if I am engaged. And yes, you will see that I got quite engaged right there. I was at a 65, like now it's starting to mellow out a bit more at a 35. So you can see when I'm really starting to talk about something that I enjoy and that is taking a lot of mental effort for me to get engaged in, this algorithm is going to track upwards. So I am trying to concentrate on what I'm doing while I am operating this webinar. So you all get a sneak peek into exactly how my mind is working. And the more I get distracted the more this goes down. So we have just done our brainwave reading, and now you can see where I stand with that. So moving forward, so today, like I mentioned, we're going to introduce our moderators real quickly. I just did that. We're going to talk a little bit about our story, and then we'd like to discuss some of our next challenges. So this webinar is only intended to be about a half an hour long. I'd be more than excited to bring on anybody who is interested in talking. If you want to jump on as a moderator and join this chat, feel free to do so. I'd be more than happy to hear any questions that you have or anything else that you'd like to know. So I'm going to go ahead and get started on our next segment here. Is a bit about our story. And we have a little video clip to share while I do this. And I'll also do a brain check at the end of this to see how engaged I am and see if I am actually paying attention to everything that I'm doing right now. So I'll just tell our story while we have this video playing in the background. And I think this would be a great way to kind of frame our discussion. So you can see here, NeuroMaker, a bit of what we just talked about. We came out of the iLab, and you can see we have, I feel like I get one of the coolest jobs in the world because I get to speak with people way more intelligent than I am, some of which created this prosthetic hand that you can see on the right side. So what we did was we took our in-house technology and we turned it into a bunch of products that students can use in their classroom. So one of which is the actual first iteration of our prosthetic. And students get to work with a few different AI tools, some programming tools, some engineering design frameworks, and some other ways that they can be a part of the process that we took when we created medical prosthetic. And then, of course, at the same time, we also had these other amazing technology around that we could use, which is our BCI headband. So at our core, we are a brain-computer interface company, and our whole job is trying to connect this kind of emerging technology with the things that students can be prepared for in their future endeavors. So what you will see coming up here is students get to have their own experience building these sets and really ideating different ways that they can apply them into the world of assistive technology. So that world of really helping people through technology that might be suffering from some kind of an ailment or a handicap, and thinking more of just making a car go faster or a robot follow a line. We're trying to give students a bit more of an open experience where they can start to engage with some new things. And on that same note, we're able to use this technology to work with that kind of hardware as well. So you'll see the more that you get to know my brain is the easier it is to actually use my brain signals to control something else. So there's tons of stuff out there like the hand that you see here on my screen, along with other projects that we can connect this output to, and we can actually control different household items with our brain signals. So this is not just meant to be something theoretical that we never get to see out there in the world. So I'm actually going to go ahead and do another brain check and see how my brain is working. So there you go. You can see it again. I got really engaged up there. I could actually start collecting this data so we can see it over a longer time frame, but I am at this moment in time incredibly lazy, and I'm going to use this as a mechanism to talk through. I'm just going to use this data output as a mechanism to talk through what's happening here. But we can certainly start collecting my brainwave data across this entire webinar if you really wanted to. But I think there's a lot to unpack here, so I'm not going to jump too far ahead right now. But that's a quick little background about us. And what we like to think is that this story really informed the way that we are working with all the products and services that we offer and the experiences that our students get to share. So that is the story of us. And what I would like to do, so I'm going to start this conversation with just myself. And then if anybody else wants to chime in, feel free to do so. I'd like to talk through some of the building blocks and the questions that we asked ourselves to kind of get to where we are here. I'd like to connect this with some of the EEG activity coming from my brain. But typically I do this with another person. We're improvising a bit while we're a little short-staffed at the moment. But I would be really honored if you all would share your responses to some of the following questions, which we use as a vehicle here to really understand the things that keep us going at our work. So what I would like to do is first share this question, and I would like you to answer this into the chat when you get a chance to think about it. And what I'm also going to do is, while I am thinking about the answer to this question, and while you are thinking about it, I'm going to show you my brainwave signals so you can see how well I'm focusing on this. So the first one is, when did you know you wanted the career you have today? And what were your influences in childhood and later on? So what were the inspirational things that happened to you when you were in the formative years of your educational experience, or while you were delving into your career? And how did these things influence where you are today? So I'm going, as promised, I'm going to think about this question while I write down some notes on a piece of paper. And I would like you all to please take a look at my brain activity and see if I am actually doing the work that I am supposed to be doing. So as promised, you are going to get an outlet into my brain, and let's see how well I can focus and think about this. So go ahead, take a couple minutes, or take about 30 seconds or so to think through this a bit more, and then we'll come back and discuss a little bit. So I'm going to go ahead and think a little bit here. So feel free to take a look at this attention algorithm. If I am thinking about this thoroughly and writing down some notes, you should see this go up, but I am famously terrible at getting into an attentive state, so please be forewarned. All right, So I just took in a couple notes there. I can see I did not get overly attentive. I can typically do that quite well when I am like really talking through things. That's just the way that my personal style works well. And of course, I'm also getting very self-conscious about this because I am doing this live and I'm talking to you all. So appreciate all of the empathy that you can have for what I'm doing. I'm actually going to leave this screen up because I think it's more interesting. So I'll go ahead and share first, and then I'll read through a couple of the chats that came in. So I would, for me to get into the career field that I am, like really working with this education technology and the forefront of new things that we can interact with in the classroom, I would actually like to circle back to one of the teachers that I had when I was in high school. I had an absolutely phenomenal calculus teacher who was absolutely passionate about teaching us all the things that would make us appreciate math a bit more and put it into context than just a bunch of numbers on a piece of paper. So what he actually did is we needed to learn about not derivatives. We had to learn about taking the area under a function using calculus, and it was actually difficult to do that with just paper, but he actually baked a bundt cake for us. So he baked a cake and we had to use calculus in order to find out the area underneath that function. And it was super fun. And it really made me aware of like, oh, not only is this subject a lot more approachable to me now, but it's also something that can be a lot more interesting than just, some scratch work on a piece of paper. So that's one influence that really weighed heavily for me and made me a lot more passionate about the things than I do now. But let me take a look at some of the responses. So we have from Claire. So I'm going to read this aloud just so we can all delve on it a little bit. So I knew I wanted to be involved in education at about 20 when I worked with a group of students in Northern California as a student observer. My mom and several family members were teachers and educators, and some of the most memorable and influential adults in my life were teachers. So that's also, I'll give you a shout out, Claire. That was actually, I have some pieces similar to that. My father was actually a teacher for middle schoolers that were suffering from behavioral issues. And the work that he really put towards that was something that like really carried me forward too. So these are all things like taking a look at some of the stuff that we've really put together. I know that a lot of our partnership team have come from very similar places, and those are the things that have really brought us to where we are today. So certainly something that really something that we try to share with the students that we work with as much as possible, and is something that we try to connect to the lessons and the activities that we have students work through every day to make this go forward. So I'd be thrilled to hear anybody else's thoughts on this question. If you're thinking about it a bit more or just need a little bit more time to think things through, feel free to drop those into the chat at any time. But it's certainly something that I'm always personally interested in is how we really got to where we are today. So thank you for your feedback there. Let me go ahead and take a look at this next question. So what opportunities do you see for young people in STEM that they may not see for themselves? So once again, as promised, I am going to take a BCI spin, or really a neuroscience spin to this question. I am going to allow you to take a look at my brain while I think about this question. So as you can see already, I tend to get into an attentive state while I am talking and explaining things a bit more than when I happen to be writing things through on a piece of paper. And it's just one of the ways that my brain works with different stimuli that come through. So let me pop up this question once again, if anybody else wants to share. What opportunities do you see for young people in STEM that they may not see for themselves? So go ahead, think about it a bit. Feel free to drop it in the chat if you would like to share anything. And in the meantime, I'm going to leave you with my brain signals while I think through this question a bit more. And in case anybody's interested, I'm happy to explain more here, but I realize there's a limited time in our session today. So I will address that if you would like. Okay. So as you can see, my brain is not working as hard as it normally is when I am discussing something. You can see it go up already when I start to explain things to people or get thoughts out of my mind. I typically do not get into an engaged state unless I am talking through something, not so much when I am sitting down and writing things out. So you can already see that start to go up. So let me go ahead and take a look at the chat. So I'm going to switch it around this time, and I am going to read through a few of the things that came through the chat, and then I'll share my own personal feelings. And by the way, if anybody else wants to speak their mind on this subject live, I'd be happy to promote you to panelist and actually get your voice in the room. And to be extra, how should I say this? To give you the benefit of objective science, you'll be able to see how engaged I am with your answer by looking at my brain here live on the screen. So if anybody would like to do that, please feel free to drop in the chat that you want to be on the webinar. So let me go ahead and read some of the submissions that came in, and I will share my piece after that. So heard here, I wanted to be involved with education as a result of many family members being teachers. In many ways, I fell into it, but I believe the power of education to affect positive change. So certainly big picture thinking, that's like education can do a lot more than just teach people fundamental skills. There's a lot more about future life experiences that people can have that education can unlock than just STEM itself. So our next one, STEM introduces students to content they may not have access to otherwise. STEM is hands-on and supports all students. Totally agree. I'm going to share my piece on that in just a moment. But my next one, my students, 4th to 7th graders, always seem to imagine STEM meant wearing a lab coat, not realizing that it encompassed things like healthcare, agriculture, transportation, and more. So totally agree with all that. I would like to add on my extra piece to this, which is my personal favorite thing about how STEM can unlock those kind of opportunities for students is that I like to call it the I can factor, which is that and this is different for different people out there, but I think this is particularly true of students who do not have family members that are engaged in some sort of engineering. When the students get the opportunity to complete something that they thought is technically complex, or at least before they really got involved with it, that they did not feel like it was something that they could potentially do or see all the pieces worked, I think they get to unlock what I like to call the I can factor, which is going from complete zero confidence in being able to do something to a lot higher level of confidence. One of the things that we discussed in one of our previous webinars was everything about grit and the wonderful research that Angela Duckworth has done there. And to add on to all those great submissions that we had just now in the chat, I firmly agree with all those things and would like to add that when people really get to stick through to the end and they get to stick their minds to something that they originally thought was not something they were capable of doing, then you really get to unlock more of those I cans and start to get students to take a bit more agency over the things that they're doing in life. So 100% agree with everybody who dropped that into the chat. Any other ideas come through, feel free to feed them in as well. So we have our next one. So what I'm going to do, so we got 2 more quick questions. I'd love to get your feedback on these 2. And then what I'd love to do is dissect a bit more about what's going on in my brain so that you can see why my brain is acting the way that it is on this webinar. I think that'd be something that'd be really fun for everybody too. So next one, this is going to be geared towards our the folks on the webinar that are in the workforce already. What do you love about your job, or what makes you want to go to work every day? So once again, feel free to think about that for a moment, and then I am going to take a look at my notes, start writing things out, and see if I can get that attention score higher than what I typically have been. But that comes with the caveat that we have been talking about for the past 20 minutes or so. All right. So once again, you can see when I start to put things to paper, my attention score starts to go down, but you will soon see as I start to get a bit more attentive to what is going on here in the webinar, my score starts to go up again. Yeah, so you can already see that start to happen. So this is going to be different for everybody that works with this. I think it's really cool to kind of see live over a longer period of time, as opposed to just some of the short demos that I typically do with people. So now you get to see how this really works as time goes on. So next one, I am going to read aloud one of our submissions. So I love that my job doesn't feel like a job. Ooh, I'm getting a lot of responses and I'm losing track of where this cursor is. I love that my job doesn't feel like a job. I feel like I'm working on projects of my own choosing because my job aligns with the things I'm passionate about. I would love to be able to say that every day too. And I think one thing I am going to throw out there, this is just off the cuff Andrew conversation, is that I think that the world of remote work, I feel like I fell into it because of COVID and a lot of other people did. I feel like this has unlocked a lot more personal agency over projects and being treated a bit more like adults as opposed to being corralled into a sterile office environment. So I'd like to make my own weird opinion loud there. So we have another one. I love how your attention score is highest for this particular question. So like I said, you get to see everything that's happening in my brain now. There's no secrets. Either this thing is engaging myself or it's not. You get to see what's going on in my brain live. So not exactly a lie detector, but certainly something to make some inferences off of. So yes, Heather, this is the real, you're getting the real deal here. All right, we got another submission. I love the amount of amazing technology I am getting to interface with, and very capable people with innovative ideas are all around me. I hope we can live up to that. And as you can see, while I was reading that aloud, and when I think about it, I'm getting more engaged. So I hope that's certainly something we all get to say. I will just throw out there real quick that I just wrote down a couple notes. I feel like for my personal job here in this STEM field, one day never feels the same. I get to work through issues that have no clear or definitive answer. So one of the fun things that I get to think about very often is how on earth can brain machine computer technology actually help people in real life and within education? And look at that attention score. As you can see, when I start to talk through that, I get very engaged with what I'm talking about. And as I start to laugh, I'm bringing it down. That was one of the highest scores I've typically seen on one of these things. When you get a 90, you know you're doing something right. Okay, so let me throw the last one out there. Once again, I think this is another fun exercise that you can really see how this BCI technology really works and can lead you through some different ways that some of these thoughts can get processed into actual data. Let me throw this last question out there. This is definitely a plant. I apologize for those of you who are very attentive and are seeking to get good answers to what we are discussing. This is clearly a plant so that we can share some more stuff about what we're doing. I'm going to be a bit real with you all. If you want to learn more about what we're doing, feel free to visit our website. I'm not going to do too many product plants here. I think it's more exciting to kind of share some of how this actually connects to some of the software that's happening in my head and unpack some of this information that we don't always get to talk about. But just to make this very fruitful for everybody who's on board, if any of you happen to know any great resources within STEM or engaging students and educators in the world of STEM itself, and even if they're not a NeuroMaker one, please feel free to share those in the chat. I personally love to know too, and I think it would be of great value to everything that's happening here. So while you are all putting that together, as promised, we wanted to keep this webinar about a little over a half an hour. So I'm going to shamelessly take a little bit of extra time to kind of talk through what is happening on this screen. So as I said before, this attention algorithm is going to be measuring how engaged I am in real time with whatever I am thinking about at the moment. So you can imagine if you are a race car driver and you are on the road and you are thinking solely about what you are seeking to do, which is, control a very fast vehicle while going through turns and loops and things like that, you're going to want your engagement to be very high. So that the way that this algorithm is tailored is that your brain will give off certain electrical signals when that's happening. There's a lot of cool neuroscience that happens behind the scenes to make this work. but this is one of the endpoint algorithms that you can get. Also, how this is built, while we're on this call, I think it's a lot of fun to take a look at this. So those small electrical signals that are creating this algorithm actually emerge from here, which is EEG. So EEG is the kind of technology that this headband is using. It is an abbreviation for electroencephalography, which if you can say that 5 times fast, you will certainly get a prize. And as mentioned, these are the actual raw voltages. So just like there's a voltage that comes out of your electrical socket to power your computer or the light next to your bed, the same thing happens on a much smaller scale from your brain. So that when clusters of neurons in your brain fire in certain sequences and certain patterns, we can actually detect that and then make inferences about what's happening in your head. And just to show you that this actually does correlate with a kind of electrical signal, you'll see if I contract my muscles on my forehead, so when I blink, you will actually be able to see each blink come up on the screen. So I'm going to blink 3 times and take a look for 3 peaks that are going to come up on this reading. Ready? Yep, so you can see those. So you see 3 blinks. As you can see, the contractions of the muscles on my forehead are going to be a little bit different for each blinks. So as this graph auto scales to those signals, like you'll be able to see those really big spikes. And of course, all these little spikes here are a combination of the muscle signals that are coming from your forehead and actually the signals that are coming from your brain as well. As you can tell, when I touch my forehead a little bit, that electrical activity went up again. So thankfully, as I mentioned before, we get some very talented engineers who actually get to comb through what these signals mean. So a lot of that noise from your muscles is actually filtered out. So we actually do that work for you. And these algorithms will just measure the signals in your brain that we're more interested in. And just because we're all here and I feel like I want to keep talking, I'm going to go ahead and unpack some of these other algorithms too. So you may have heard of different brainwaves out there. So there's a lot of really interesting stuff, and I feel like it's hard for me to organize my thoughts around how to explain all of this in a very short session. But your brain is constantly giving off signals, and all those signals can be organized into different waves. So different frequencies of how fast these signals are, more or less how fast these signals are coming out, that we can organize into different bins. So we have alpha waves, we have delta waves, gamma waves, beta waves, and theta waves. The nuances behind all this stuff isn't super important for all the basic things that we want to do. But just to give you a little bit of context into these, by looking at the different ratios of some of these waves, you can actually make broad inferences on the state of your brain itself. So for instance, if you look at a combination of your alpha waves and your beta waves, of course, we don't visualize these the same way as these waves are, because that's a lot of information to unpack. When you look at that ratio of alpha waves to beta waves, you can actually make a very simple version of this attention algorithm. So throw it out there for any fellow nerds out there. If you want to learn about how this works, go ahead and look up the POPE Engagement Index, the POPE Engagement Index. It was created in the 90s for NASA using a combination of those 2 different waves. And that will give you a very quick and dirty way to create your own attention algorithm. And of course, what we did here was we applied some machine learning over it. We looked at different people in different attentive states, and we said, hey, if your brain is giving off a certain attentive profile, that typically means that these electrical signals are going to be firing a certain way. So let's cross-reference that engagement index to the data that we collected from those very engaged people. And then this way, we can actually start to build out this attention algorithm. And just like I said there, so by looking at that ratio of different waves, and then by taking on some of that machine learning characteristics, we can also create a meditation algorithm. So this one here is built off the same principles. We're looking at that ratio of waves. But then what's really cool about this, and if any of you out there are yoga or meditation practitioners, we actually reviewed the brain signals of different people in different meditative states. So not only for this meditation algorithm do we look at these individual waveforms, but we also compare it to the performance of meditation experts that we have worked with. So there's a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes, a lot of calculations happening. My last fun treat for you all is I am going to meditate for about 20 seconds or so. I would like you to look for two things. So number one, see what my attention algorithm does. Does it go up or down? And then take a look at my meditation algorithm. The reason why I ask is because they're going to perform a little bit differently than you might expect. And I'm going to unpack that in just a bit. So because you made it this far, and because I've been talking for a long time, allow me to have some time to relax, take a look at what my brain does. We'll unpack that a bit, and then I'd be happy to address any additional questions that you all have, and then we can call it a day. So let me go ahead and meditate for about 20 seconds, and then I'm going to open my eyes and we'll unpack what's going on the screen. So here we go. Oh, that actually felt really good. So typically what happens here, as you can see, I am hyped up on coffee and trying to get a bit more in the mental state that I want to. Normally, your attention algorithm will go down quite a bit. I guarantee you, if I try really hard, I can get this below a 10. I'm very good at relaxing my brain. And what you will see is that my meditation score went up while I was meditating. So I think for all of you who are really interested in this kind of stuff, there's two different kinds of meditation that we track, which is focused meditation and open awareness meditation, which is if you think about, and we explain this a lot in our curriculum and blog posts for all of you that are really interested, if you think of meditation as the classic Buddhist monk sitting down in stationary with their hands out, typically they're practicing open awareness meditation, which means you are simply clearing your mind and letting yourself go completely blank and just letting the world happen around you. So that's when you look at somebody and people will snap in front of them and they won't react because they are being completely disconnected from the world as much as they can mentally do away from them. So that is something that this algorithm will track. The second kind will also be a focused meditation, which means if you will sit down and maybe you hear people they'll say a mantra over and over again. So, typically we hear like an om or something like that. Or sometimes people will focus on just their own breathing. That means that you are focusing in on just one thing while letting the rest of your senses kind of go blank and allowing yourself to relax that way. That is focused meditation, and that will also lead to a higher meditation score. So unpacking all that, that means one of the most interesting questions that we get asked is, why does my attention algorithm go up at the same time as my meditation does? I thought that my attention algorithm was supposed to be how hard my brain is working. Well, yes, that is true, but also it is these are both tracking similar patterns that are happening in both of those states. So if you are focusing in on one thing and you're staying very concentrated on it, whether that be on your own meditation or not, you're going to see that kind of similar pattern with those two algorithms working in concert. So, and conversely, if you're practicing open awareness meditation, you are most likely going to see your attention level go down and your meditation level go up. And then what's really cool about all this stuff is you get to see how all of your brainwaves function during that process at the same time. So I just unpacked a lot there. Yes, and thank you. My meditation did go up there. Okay, so we answered a bunch of questions there. I hope you got a nice look at what can happen with BCI. There's a lot of fun stuff that unpacks here, and we are just scratching the surface with some of this stuff. You can imagine that if you get great control over these metrics that you can see on my screen here, you can actually use those to command and power other technology that you connect to it. So, excuse me. So you can imagine all the open APIs that are out there. If you want to organize a Spotify playlist according to how meditative you are, if you want to control the speed of a light flashing by how attentive you get, or how fast we always say the fast thing, but in this case, I guess it actually works. If you want to have a drone go faster based on how attentive you are, all that comes in is just plugging in the data and making sure those things can come together. Just unpacked a lot there. If you have any other questions, I'd be happy to address those in the next 30 seconds or so, but you've all been absolutely wonderful. Thank you for participating in all those questions. And I hope that this was informative and enlightening for you all. You certainly gave me an opportunity to meditate a little bit and relax my brain, and you got some objective data to support that I actually did that. So we're all doing our due diligence here. And yes, about a remote, you can absolutely control a remote with that too. So we're looking pretty good. I don't see any additional questions. Thank you all for joining our webinar. This is actually our final webinar in our fall webinar series. You've all been absolutely awesome to be a part of this. And in case you are interested in seeing this at a later point, we'll upload this onto our NeuroMaker YouTube channel. And I hope you all have a wonderful day. So bye, everybody, and I will see you again soon.